first time, we all decided to do it again and invite some more friends to join us.
No makeup, guys.
We went back to the same studio in Nashville, but this time we didn't have Grandpa or Justin with us. They had both passed away just a few weeks earlier. But we did have their memories and some great stories shared by their friends. Some new old friends stopped by to make the day even more memorable. Boxcar Willie, Leroy Van Dyke, Stonewall Jackson, just to name a few. There are stories you've not heard before, but will enjoy hearing again and again. And if you're a true blue country fan, you might want to watch the end of the tape after the show for some extra special country material you might enjoy. So from the halls and the makeup room, from the coffee machine and the snack table, let's gather them all up, set them down, and get them singing.
When you live in the country, everybody is your neighbor. On this one thing you can rely. They'll all come to see you and never, never leave you saying, y'all come to see us by and by. Everybody! Y'all come, y'all come, y'all come, y'all come. Y'all come to see us now and then. Y'all come, y'all come, y'all come, y'all come. Y'all come to see us now and then. Sing one, Bobby Lord.
Kin folks are coming, they're coming by the dozen, eating everything from soup to hay.
Hi, Rooster.
Right after dinner, they ain't looking any thinner, and this is what you'll hear them kin folks say. Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Well, y'all come to see us when you can. Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Well, y'all come to see us now and then.
Take one, Mike, or somebody. That's Mike Johnson and the All-Star Pickers. And Glenn Duncan on the fiddle. Who knows the verse?
Grandma's wishing they'd come to the kitchen and help finish us right away.
Right away.
But right after dinner, there's a 2-minute dinner. That's when you all say, have it first.
Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Well, y'all come to see us now and then. Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come! Y'all come to see us now and then. Y'all come to see us now and then. Yes, word! Yeah, come!
You know, I was thinking, all the people in this room have traveled, or most of us have, for most of our lives. If we were to add up all the miles that everybody in this room has traveled, I mean, it would, you did? Millions and millions and millions of miles. We got a lot of road stories. I thought today maybe what we ought to start off with is just, let's just all remember some funny things and crazy things that have happened to us out on the road that probably wouldn't happen to other folks. I remember Johnny Russell telling me one time he got to a show and said this man came up to him and said, "How'd you guys get here? Travel?" And Tommy Cash said the other day at a fair date down in Florida that a guy came up to him and said, are you boys from out of town or somewhere else? Bobby Lord is with us. I know you've traveled an awful lot. Your days on the Ozark Jubilee out in Springfield with Red Foley. Tell the great Bobby Lord story about how they put your name up on the marquee that time.
Tell them, baby.
You would.
We embarrass everybody equally here.
Let me tell you the whole story. I went to Powellville, Iowa, to play a ballroom there with Bill Wimberly and the Country Rhythm Boys from the Ozark Jubilee. I bought a paper to see where we were playing, and there was a half-page ad in the paper that read, directly from Ozark Jubilee, Bill Wimberly, which is not an easy name, Bill Wimberly and the Country Rhythm Boys, spelled perfectly, and featuring B-A-B-Y-L-A-R-D. Baby Lard. But I have to tell you the most distressing part of this whole story. We had a packed house that night. I started to change my name.
Grab the microphone, Bill.
I got one better than that. I hope it's decent to tell. But one of the first trips I went on after I came to Grand Ole Opry is I was on the tour with Ira Lubin and Cowboy Copas and a bunch of them. We went down to Mobile, Alabama, and they had posters made up for the show. And they spelled everybody's name but mine right. Instead of Billy Walker, they hit it Tallywwaker. That's the absolute truth. Absolute truth. And I'm not going to pronounce that. That is the truth.
Leroy Van Dyke has a wonderful story about getting your name wrong when they introduced you on stage.
There have been lots of those. Backstage, Minneapolis, and it was a big convention. The guy that signed the contract thought that since he signed the contract, he had the pleasure and privilege of introducing the star. I heard the music start, knowing it was time for me to come on. I didn't know what he said. I came out, the drummer was falling through the drums. My wife was playing keyboards and singing backup. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Nobody could play. He came to the center microphone. He said, direct from Nashville, Tennessee, in the Grand Ole Opry, Lyle Van Dyck.
Billy, I've got one. I've got one on Bill Carlisle. We was working up in New York or someplace, and Bill Carlisle was on the show, and this man was going to. He didn't have anybody to MC the show, but he had a lady friend. He was about 70, and she was about 25. And I don't reckon there's nothing wrong with it if you can handle it. But anyway, no, they ain't. Believe me, I'm fast getting there. I can handle it. But anyway, I can handle both of them. He brought this. He said she was an entertainer, and she was working at a club down the road. So her date got canceled, so he brought her up there to MC our show. And she walked up to us, she said, "What is the Grand Ole Opry?" Well, I won't tell you what I told her. But she walked over to Carlisle, and she says, ask him how he wanted to be introduced. And he said, just tell him I'm with Peckerwood Records, a subsidiary of Bucket Lid. And that's how she introduced him.
Stonewall, what's the great story? Were you and Red Savine in the car when they pulled you over that time?
Yeah, this is things happened back when I first came. We had, somehow we come by an old Cadillac limousine. It was just like brand new, but it was real old, you know, like 41 model, something like that. And it looked like those people up in Chicago, you know, all those gangsters. And so we was going through town, and Red Savine was leaning across the front seat. So the police thought he probably had a gun on me or something. It just kind of weird looking at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know. And so they pulled us over and blocked the road, you know, and everything. One of them got out with a gun out and all that, and the other one came up to us. He said, let me see your license. So I showed him a license. He said, Stonewall Jackson. He said, Stonewall Jackson. Said, well, who is that in the back seat? Is that Abraham Lincoln? And I said, no, that's Woodrow Wilson. And he said, boy, you smarting off of me. And I said, Red, show him before he locked us up, you know.
Yeah, because Red Savine's real name was Woodrow Wilson Savine.
Woodrow Wilson Savine.
Bill, this is me over here. I think everybody in this room at one time or another has got a grandpa story. He's always been just one of my favorite people in the whole world. But for a long time at the Grand Ole Opry, in the last few years, he had gotten to where he could confuse your names, you know, when he'd start to introduce you. And as typical as it always was, he'd look at me and he'd know exactly who I was. He'd turn around and introduce my kids, says, Jill and Jack's out here, so make her welcome. Jean Shepard, Seeley, and I came out on stage and I said, Grandpa, over the last 3 weeks you have introduced me as ever Gene in the business except Gene Aldridge, so tonight I'll just be him.
Who's that guy sitting next to you there with the overalls on? I want to especially welcome Boxcar
Thank you,
Willie
Bill.
to this gathering. We are so glad to have you. So great to see you, man.
I'd have made the last one, but I had to make a little detour.
You've made a lot of detours lately, but we're glad you're back on the main road.
This ain't real funny, but it actually happened. I'll tell you a story about my hat. And you can tell it's been a few miles. And it made 2 trips across the Atlantic Ocean without me. I was booked in England, and I checked this thing in. I had it in a hat box. And they put on there DFW Gatwick. So I was over there for 30 days. As a matter of fact, I think Skeeter might have been on that tour with me. And when I would come back, I checked it in at Gatwick to DFW. Well, we got the cleared customs and everything, got our bags, and my hat box was missing. Couldn't find it nowhere. So I turned it in as lost baggage. Finally, I had to leave the airport without my hat. And it was gone for 30 days. And American Airlines said, we're going to make this was before the end of the 30 days was up, said, we'll have to make an adjustment. I said, we've lost your hat. How much is it worth? And I said, $10,000. I said, it's got a gold record on the front of it, and there's a little gold record right there. And it's real gold. But what happened was, the hat came back from Gatwick, London, and somebody forgot to tear off the Gatwick, DFW Gatwick, and the guy looked at it and said, oh, that's going to London. So he threw it, and he went to London and stayed in London for 30 days, and American Airlines found it, shipped it back to me, and I was ready to collect the $10,000. But you had to show up and run that gig, too, didn't you?
That's a great story. We got to hear a little bit of the Wabash Cannonball from Boxcar.
Woo! Where's Oz at? Oz is going to kick it off for me.
All right. Kick it off for him, Oz.
Just whatever key you and Mr. Acuff used to do it in. This is one of the most familiar sounds at the Grand Ole Opry. Yeah. From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, to the queen of Flowing Mountain by the South Hills by the shore. She's mighty tall and handsome and known quite well by all. She's traveling through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball. Brother Oswald and his dobro. Oh, we're supposed to back sing here again?
Yeah.
Well, our eastern states are dandy, so the people always say. From New York to St. Louis and Chicago, by the way. From the hills of Minnesota where the rippling waters fall. No changes can be taken on the Wabash Cannonball. We're traveling down to Dixie on the Wabash Cannonball. Wish we'd had time to rehearse that. The best band I ever had. Never had a greater one. Most expensive little rhythm band I ever had behind me.
Box, those overalls got you somewhere that even the governor couldn't get one time, didn't he?
This is a very funny story. I was at the World Series game between the Atlanta Braves and the Blue Jays in Toronto 2 or 3 years ago. And Zell Miller, the governor of Georgia, was sitting down with Ted Turner and Jane Fonda. And my friend, umpire Joe West, told me that after the game was over to come to the umpire's room. So I go down the steps, and go by Ted Turner's box and Jane Fonda, and there sits the governor, Zell Miller, with Ted and Jane. He said, "Where are you going, Boxcar?" I said, "I'm going down to umpire's room." He said, "Wait a minute, I ain't never been down there." So I said, "Well, come on, I'll take you down there." We got down there to the gate, and this great big burly policeman, must have been 8, 9 foot tall. He said, told Governor Miller, said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going down to umpire's room." He said, "Oh, no, you ain't." He said, "I'm the governor of Georgia." He said, "I don't care if you're president, you ain't going down here." He looked over at me, he said, "Oh, Boxcar." I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Down to umpire's room." He said, "Well, come on." I said, "I want to take my friend the governor with me." He said, "Okay, go ahead." We started down the alleyway toward the door of the umpire's room, and he said, "Now, ain't this something? I'm the governor of this state, and I can't get down here. Here's a hobo from Missouri. He can go anywhere he wants."
I traveled all over the world with Tex Ritter. We traveled in station wagons on 2-lane roads and did 4 or 5 shows in every town we played in. And I hear these guys today complain about doing one show with a king-size bed in an air-conditioned bus with a television and a refrigerator. What is that?
We need to get Joe another microphone there.
Yeah.
Bury that one and hand him another one over there. There you go.
That really was a scratchy story, and I need to tell it right, yeah. But we used to travel in station wagons, and we would share the driving. Tex would drive 100 miles, and I'd drive 2,000. But I once considered changing my name to, going to court and changing my name to "and many others," so I'd get billing on the shows where we went. But one of the best ones I ever saw, we played the Hippodrome Theater in Baltimore. Glenn Randall in Hollywood had put a little trick on White Flash, where he massaged his flank right in here with a smooth stick, and he would make White Flash go backstage instead of on stage. Well, this one time he couldn't get, the trick wasn't working. So Tex went out and put him through his whole thing. He kissed the little boys and girls, and he counted his age, and he took a bow, and Tex was walking toward the mic, and without him knowing it, White Flash did it behind him on the stage. So Tex walked up to the mic, and he handed the reins off to the wrangler and says, "Well, White Flash has done his part, now I'll do mine."
It did what?
Bobby Lord will remember that happened with an elephant on the Jubilee stage in Springfield, Missouri. Yeah.
Yes.
Very indelicate.
And all-consuming. While you got your microphone, what was your name again that the guy introduced you?
Lyle Van Dyck. No, but before, I want to know something, if this is true about Franklin Delano over here. On a bus in Canada, you kept trying to get your hair in shape, and you kept spraying it with hairspray, and it wouldn't work. Found out you were spraying some sort of Desenex or something, athlete's foot stuff on your hair. He said, at least I won't have athlete's head. If I see you tomorrow on some street in town, pardon me if I don't say hello. I belong to another, it wouldn't look so good to know someone I'm not supposed to know. Just walk on by, wait on the corner. I love you, but we're strangers when we meet. Just walk on by, wait on the corner. I love you, but we're strangers when we meet. It'll turn around here. In a dimly lit corner at a place outside of town, tonight we'll try to say goodbye again. But I know it's not over. We didn't rehearse. I'll call tomorrow night. I can't let you go, so why pretend? Just walk on by, wait on the corner. I love you, but we're strangers when we meet. Just walk on by, wait on the corner. I love you, but but we're strangers when we meet. I love you, but we're strangers when we meet. Oh,
That's great, Leroy. I wonder if everybody in this room knows that that song and that record by Leroy was voted the #1 country record in Billboard for the last, 35 years. Yeah. 100 years. Oh, that's terrific, man. That is really...
Here, let me pay tribute. I have not been respectful enough.
Talking about names, did people ever get you mixed up with Dick Van Dyke?
all the time. I know Dick Van Dyke and I know Jerry Van Dyke. And I walked up to Jerry one time and said, Jerry, do they? He said, yes, they do all the time, and I'm sick of it. He knew what I was going to ask.
I got him mixed up with Charlie Dick earlier.
You never know what people are going to say. We were talking earlier here. Guy came up to me at a show one time and he said, he saw the look on my face that I didn't know who he was. He said, you know me? I said, no. He said, you don't remember me? I said, no. He said, you know me. I saw your picture in the paper.
Hear about it.
I had a woman come up in a restaurant not long ago, and I've been off television for a while, and she said, I know you. I've seen you on television. And I said, no, really? And she said, but I can't remember your name. I said, Bobby Lord. She said, no.
That ain't it.
That ain't it.
What did the man, little Tater over there, how did the man introduce you that time at the show? We got a dead microphone, I think, here. We'll get it repaired in a minute.
1, 2, 3. That's testing. They do that in show business. I heard people do that before. We were working in Springfield, Illinois, for Big Sam's. The Big Sam's organization is senior citizens who have motorhomes and that, and they had a big convention in Springfield. And this man came up. We were working under a tent, and this man came up about 5 minutes before showtime and said, I've been chosen to introduce you tonight. And I said, well, I tell you what. I said, well, the way we usually do it is you introduce the band, the Country Boys, and they'll do a couple of numbers, and then they'll bring me on. He said, not tonight. And I said, okay. I said, just give the guys time to go out on the stage and plug their instruments in and everything and be ready when you introduce me. He looked at his watch and said, it's time to go, and walked out there, and the band hadn't even plugged in or nothing. And he walked up that microphone, and he was a man of few words. He said, ladies and gentlemen, we have some entertainment for you here tonight. He's from Nashville, Tennessee. His name is Little Jimmy Dickerson, and he's king of the banjo.
Where did he get that?
You ever played a banjo in your life?
They tell me, he said, that he's king of the banjo. Wasn't sure about that himself.
I got one to tell on Tater. Is when the Gaylords bought Opryland and the Grand Ole Opry, and Miss Gaylord had a dinner for us that night down there. And Miss Gaylord looked over at Mr. Gaylord and said, "Oh, look, Daddy," said, "little Bobby Dickens."
Her favorite. The first time I
One of her all-time favorites.
Oh, well, okay. That's Miss Gaylord said that. She can do that anytime.
Jimmy, you're talking about a man of few words when he introduced you. I went to Canada one time to do about a 15-day tour, and there was a disc jockey on the show that followed us to every show we did to MC the show, and every night he read 2 pages of my bio as my introduction. That was it. He read every word on the bio, everything that he had that was typed up, and he did it every night. And nobody could convince him that he didn't need to say all that. He said, well, I want him to know who she is.
Can I tell you something? The first time I ever saw Jimmy Dickens, and Jimmy might remember this, but me and Betty Jack, we decided to go see Jimmy Dickens on a Thanksgiving day, and I was 18 years old at the time, 17 years old at the time. And we missed Thanksgiving, but since we're talking about introductions, and he'll know I remember because your guitar player his name was Jabbo, I believe, and I remember the striking the striking Western shirts they had on. They looked like they were right out of the movies, and we missed everything for Thanksgiving to go see Jimmy that day. But I remember when they were going to say, somebody said, "How do you want us to bring you on?" And I still remember to this day because we were so impressed with your Jimmy Dickens diamond ring, and we wanted to have one like that one day with our initials. But you said, "Just introduce me as the star that I am." Never forgot it. And that's about as good an introduction as you could have. And you said it, and they did it.
Stan Hitchcock.
Bill, you know, the life of a traveling hillbilly is not a normal life. I mean, you have to learn, well, you didn't know it. You have to learn the art of the road, and I hadn't learned it back in 1964. I was fresh in town. In fact, I was just fresh everywhere, I guess. But I was fresh in town, been here a couple of years, and I'd worked the Friday Night Opry, and I had 2 days booked on that weekend in Florida. So I'm backstage, and I'm talking to Ray Pilla, and he's saying, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "Well, I've got to drive all the way to Florida, you know, by myself and do these shows." And he said, "Well, be careful, don't fall asleep and kill yourself." So I did the Opry, Friday Night Opry, and I headed for Florida. Drove all that night, got there the next day, did the show. 2 shows that hadn't been to bed. Start driving, then I got one in Miami the next day. Well, by this time, I've been up, 2 days, and I'm driving along in the middle of Florida about 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock down there. And I've got the radio on, but I don't even know it. I'm just lost. I'm so tired. I'm nodding off. I'm jerking. And I'm running off the road and everything else. And all of a sudden, God calls me. "Hitchcock. Come in, Hitchcock. I know you're out there." Well, I knew it was God because nobody else knew where I was at. So it just scared me to death. I mean, I pulled over and walked around the car about 15 minutes trying to get myself together and drove on down and did the show. And I got back to Nashville the next week. I was doing the Opry again. And I had to tell somebody about this divine thing that had happened to me. So I was back in the dressing room with Jimmy Capps was there. And I'm saying, "Cap, something happened to me on this last weekend, man. I was driving down through Florida, and God called my name." He said, "What time did it happen?" I said, "Oh, it must have been about 1 o'clock, I guess, something like that." He started laughing, and he said, "Well, fool, that wasn't God. That was Ray Pilla. We were doing the Ernest Tubb record shop." And he said, Pilla wasn't feeling much pain, and he said, while he was singing a song, and during their turnaround, he got down behind the stage and got the bass microphone and was using it like a CB radio, calling you. And all this time, I'm down in Florida thinking God's called and I've got cut off,
We're talking about introductions. I know Dale Reeves, and I'm sure a lot of the other people in this room worked in, speaking of Miami, for Cracker Jim, who would give you the greatest intro. What did you tell me one time he introduced you as well?
No, me and Buck Owens was on the show together. And I did my show and come off. But he's a very man of few words. But he always says things like, "Here's a guy in a watermelon suit. Buck Owens, come out here."
That was his introduction?
Watermelon suit.
I think I was on that same show. And weren't you on that show, Skeeter? Down there, it was Buck Owens, George Jones, Farron Young, and I think Skeeter. And, but he came out, anyway, Farron was late, as usual. I mean, he was flying in, but he was late, and Cracker Jim went out there, and he said, "Now, everybody's waiting for Farron Young." Farron was the headliner.
Mm-hmm.
And the audience applauded, and he said, "And Farron is going to be here." And the audience applauded. He said, "But first, the man in the watermelon colored suit,
Yeah.
Buck Owens."
That's right.
And that's it.
There's another Cracker Jim Brooker story.
Yeah.
Marianne Worth was on the Grand Ole Opry, and she was on a big package show at the Dade County Auditorium. Cracker Jim goes out to introduce her. His introduction, word for word, was, "Here's a young lady, sings a lot like Patti Page." Turned around, walked off. Never did say her name.
Hey, Bill, we were talking about road stories. I know that everybody knows where this is at. It's the old restaurant that goes across 80 or 90, I believe, out of Chicago going to Rockford, Illinois. They got that restaurant that goes across.
Up over the highway.
Over the freeway, yeah.
Jenny Pruitt's Feet and Friends is what it is.
Oh, we've all stopped there a million times,
It's the only restroom in 50 miles.
It's the only restroom in 50 miles. That's my story. That's what I'm getting to. You're about to run my story. Yeah. Well, you know, on our buses, we went number one. You don't do number two on the buses. No. No. So I was dying. You know, I was getting, bad. And the bus driver said, well, we only got about 40 miles. I said, okay. So I held everything. And we got off that bus, and the bus driver went to run to the bathroom, straight to the bathroom. And lo and behold, those bathrooms, it cost you a dime to get in. You had to put a dime in it to open it. Well, I'm running through change. And I ain't got no dime. And he ain't got no dime. So I just got down, and there's about that much space. I crawled right up there. As soon as I got up there, the man said, whoa, 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 there's another That's the embarrassed. I've never been so embarrassed in my whole life. Never before.
Did you tell him who you were?
George Riddle, that works with me, he played with Grandpa too after George McCormick left. So Grandpa called a rehearsal. And so I said, George, can I go over to there with you over to the house? I want to see you all rehearse. So we went over there, and Grandpa said, hey, let's do this tune here. And Grandpa had a guitar, and he started playing, and they all started singing. He stopped and said, hey, don't play hardly so loud. I can't hear what I'm doing. And George said, Grandpa, I'm not going to have no guitar. Oh, it's me.
Bill, I got to tell this one on Grandpa. We was working with Grandpa up in Connecticut. Well, Grandpa, as Sam said, he didn't like to fly, but he had to fly to this date. And we kept waiting for Grandpa. The promoter went to the airport to pick him up. Grandpa wasn't there. Well, he had to change planes, I think, in Chicago. They finally tracked him down in Chicago, and they said, Grandpa, what are you doing in Chicago? He said, I'm sitting here reading a $3,500 comic book.
Somebody told me a story one time. Said he was at the border trying to go into Canada, and didn't have his papers right or something like that. He'd been standing. They'd been keeping him out of Canada for a long time. And I think this is when he was working in Wheeling. And I think Hawkshaw and some of the people from the Jamboree, Grandpa had been standing at the border trying to get into Canada for a couple of hours, and they wouldn't let him in. And Hawkshaw and a bunch of them came in, and Grandpa turned around and he said, well, it's sure good to see somebody from my own country.
Hey, Bill, we were working a tour back in the middle or late 60s, and there's about 4 or 5 of us on a tour up in Virginia. And so Grandpa and I were riding together, and, you know, he kept you in stitches all the time. He's just the most funniest man I've ever been around in my whole life. And we got in town, we checked in the motel, and neither one of us knew where we were playing. So we get the paper, and there's not anything about the show in the paper. We listened to the local country radio. Nobody said anything about it. We start looking for posters, and we start asking people, well, where we're playing. Well, finally, after a long deal about trying to find out where we finally found out where we're playing. And when we got there, and we had a pretty good, impressive package on the show, and we got there and we didn't have any people hardly. And this promoter, you know, come up to pay us off, and he was griping about didn't have any people. And old Grandpa got right up in his face, and he said, son, you can't sneak in and sneak out of town and have a crowd.
I think there's a great Bobby Bear story about I remember this vaguely, about when you were booking with Jimmy Key. Remember that? And Bobby would only check in every now and then, every few weeks, I think, and nobody knew where he was. Anybody, Jimmy Key, you could probably tell this better than I can. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Paducah, Kentucky. Well, I was booked in Paducah, and Jan Hire, I think you were on the show too, booked there. Anyway, yeah, you checked in. I drove to Paducah to do the show, and it's for a radio station there. And I didn't see anything, no advertising, no nothing. And I checked around. Finally, I got a hold of the radio station, and I said, "Where's the show?" Because I've been to the venue and nobody there. I said, "Oh, that's next week." I showed up a week early. I said, "Well, I can't make that one."
Was there another time where the place had burned down?
Oh yeah, down in Texas.
You didn't check in again.
I didn't check in. I was driving. Actually, we were driving in the band from Albuquerque to Lubbock, and it was a Club 87, Bill. You probably know that, down there on the circle. Well, we drove all day and all night from Albuquerque, and we pulled up. It was almost showtime, and we drove by the address at least 5 times, and I said, "This has got to be the spot." And we pulled in. There was a building that was gutted out. Called the promoter. He said, "Oh, hell, that place burned down last night." I said, "Nobody told me about it." We didn't do a show that night. But I have a grandpa story. Sam, we were talking about that a while ago. Sam was doing a show. We were filming a T-Pack TV special, and it was about all the stars of the Grand Ole Opry who had died. And some writer had cleverly written songs about Tex Ritter and Hawkshaw and Patsy. And Sam had everybody in the world on the show. It was me, Minnie, Grandpa, George Strait, Pat Boone, Dottie Will, everybody. Well, I was doing my TV show at the time, and I couldn't be there until about 7 o'clock at night. And they said, "Well, it's only going to take about an hour." Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, we were still there trying to do a finale. Me, Grandpa, Minnie, everybody were standing on this little riser trying to sing this song about people in the Grand Ole Opry who had died. And I turned to Grandpa, and he was standing right beside me, and I said, "How you feeling, Grandpa? You holding up all right?" And he said, "If they don't hurry up and get this done, they're going to have to write one of them songs about me."
You had a story, Bob?
I was just always amazed at how funny Grandpa thought all the time on the spur of the moment, you know. Jerry Bird took him to his cleaners, and the guy had just remodeled the cleaners, and he said, "Come on in, Grandpa." Grandpa said, "No, I don't want to go in." He said, "Come on, come on and go in with me. The fellow's just done a real nice job of remodeling his cleaners here, and he'd like to show it to us." Grandpa said, "Well, there is one thing I'd like to see. I would like to see your button crusher."
I think Bobby talking about he hadn't been on TV in a long time. We hadn't heard a song from you in a long time. Could we talk you into singing one? Whatever you got picked out. Hawkeye. Do Hawkeye. We hadn't heard that in a long time. You want me to be your mic stand?
I can put it here. We can put it here. Five Peachy, five. That's a. Oh, I can't do that one. Just do it. Everybody would think I was crazy. I'll do that later. They call me Hawkeye. All the fellas call me Hawkeye, 'cause I never miss a trick. Can spot a pretty chick a mile away. One look and I can tell just how her lips are gonna taste. Know within a fraction what she measures in the waist. Know what's going on behind a twinkle in her eye, and that is why they call me Hawkeye. I keep my eyes wide open, a gas buggy ready to ride. And nearly every evening there's a pretty kitten sitting by my side. They call me Hawkeye. It's the hawk that gets the highest flying chicken every time, even though a wolf has chased her up a tree. Well, I can spot a doll and have her cuddled in my arms before the average wolf begins to howl about her charms. Got her kissed before he even has a chance to try, and that is why they call me Hawkeye.
remember, most everybody here I know remembers when Bobby had a daily television show in Nashville. There was a time when Bobby Lord was the best known person probably in the city of Nashville. Tell the story about the lady in the parking lot that you backed into her car when you were on TV all the time. You remember that great old story, Bobby?
No,
I'll tell it the way I heard it, but it may be wrong because they get changed over the years. When you don't remember the way that I heard the story was.
Oh, I remember what you're talking about now. The lady, I backed out of a parking place and just backed right straight into the side of this car, and this woman pulled in right in beside me, and I walked over and I said, "Gee, I'm really sorry," and she said, "You hit my car." And I said, "Yes, I know, ma'am, and I'm really sorry. I just wanted to tell you that that we can get it fixed. It's okay. I'm Bobby Lord." And she said, "Well, big deal."
Stan Hitchcock was on television in Nashville early in the morning for years and years, and you've got one of the greatest stories of all time about being recognized.
Well, again, it's back in the early 60s, and this during the period of time when Bobby had his show and Ralph had his. We all had shows. And I was on 5 days a week. And then on the weekend, I had a nationwide show that was on Saturday. So 6 days a week, I was on television. Well, my recognition factor had gone up considerable, but I didn't realize it. So during this same period of time, this is 1966, I had become real enamored with the police. I mean, I loved the police. I'd ride with them at night. I made friends with them, and I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world to hang around with the police. And one of my friends was a detective, and we'd gotten to be real close. And so one Sunday afternoon, he invited me out to his house for a cookout. And we were out there cooking out, and they run out of drinks, and he said, "Come on, Hitch, let's go up to the market and get something to drink." And so we're driving up Dickerson Road, and we stopped at a stoplight. And an old car pulled up next to us, you know, and a bunch of rough-looking guys in it. And he glanced over, and he said, "My God, that's a murderer I've been looking for months." At the same time, the hood looks over at my friend, and he recognizes him. Well, he floorboards it, runs through the light, races up Dickerson Road, and chases on. Well, my heart is beating. I am living it, friends, I guarantee you. I am no longer a hillbilly singer. I am Dick Tracy. We're going up the road 100 miles an hour, and suddenly, about 2 miles up the road, they do a two-wheel turn up into a side street, trying to get away from us. And it was a bad move because the side street was a dead end. And they're going wide open, and there's a big oak tree up the end of the street, and they hit that thing, and smoke and snot and oil and gas and everything going everywhere, blood, guts, and alcohol. And we squalled up right behind them, you know. Well, they start bailing out, trying to get away, and my friend, the detective, reaches over and pulls open his glove compartment, gets his pistol, throws it in my lap, says, "You get that one over here, I'll get these on this side." Well, man, this is it. I am running up the alleyway, and I am living the dream. Well, at the end of the alley is a big old tall chain link fence, and this guy hits it going wide open, and he starts climbing it. He just gets ready to throw his leg over and make his escape, and I get there. And I got that gun, the two-handed stance that you see on television. I'm real thing. I'm pointing at him. I said, "You move, I'll blow your head off." And I meant it. I was it. Well, he's hanging there by his fingernails, and he kind of looks down at me, and he gets the strangest look on his face. And he said the words that I remember so clearly today. "Don't shoot me. I watch you on television." Now then, you can just imagine. You can just imagine, you know, how awful I felt. I'm holding a gun on one of my fans, maybe the only one I've got in the world. Well, I'm holding it on him there, and you know, I'm thinking, well, he's probably not a bad guy. He watches me. He probably buys records and attends concerts, and he may have had a bad childhood. And well, about this time, another police car pulls up behind us, and the guy jumps out, and the policeman jerks the gun out of my hand, runs up, and he pulls this guy down off the fence, throws him down on the ground, and he's got handcuffs on him, and he's dragging him to the car. And I'm trying to think of something nice to say to the guy. You know, I'm like, thanks for watching, or maybe, may the good Lord bless and keep you till we meet again. Something, you know, we always close a show like that. But I didn't have to. As they're putting him in the back seat, he looks over at me and he says, I'll tell you one thing, I ain't never watching you on television again.
What a great story.
Bill, Stan Hitchcock is one of the best singers who ever came to Nashville. Why don't you talk him into doing something for us?
I'd love that. Stan, would you sing one?
I brought my guitar. In the Cap D.
Is that microphone working all right? Are we okay with that microphone? Because it sounded a little funny out here. Okay.
This is a song that I recorded on an album long. It's an old Louvin Brothers song. I just love it. Y'all help sing it. Have I stayed away too long? Have I stayed away too long? If I came home tonight, would that same light be burned? Or have I stayed away too long? Have all of my dreams gone wrong? My beautiful dreams gone wrong? If I came home today, would you still be my darling? Or have I stayed away too long? I'm just outside of town. I'll soon be at your door. Or maybe I shouldn't hurry there. I'd best stay out of sight, worry you no more, 'cause maybe someone else is by your side. My dreams gone wrong. My beautiful dreams gone wrong. If I came home tonight, would that same light be burning? Or have I stayed away too long? Have I stayed away too long? Have I stayed away too long? If I came home tonight, would that same light be burning? Or have I stayed away too long?
Oh, that's great. We haven't heard a song from our buddy Stonewall Jackson since this has been going on. Walt, you got a good one for us?
Yeah, I got the one that got me the job at the Grand Ole Opry. And I don't know about my voice because they got me up before noon today.
Lay it on us.
Okay, here's Don't Be Angry. I believe the boys will kick it off. And don't be angry with me, darling, if I fail to understand all your little whims
and wish you all the time. Just to remember that I love you and I'm just a foolish man. And my head stays sort of foggy 'cause you're mine. Well, I recall the first time that I flirted with you, dear, when I jokingly said, come and be my bride. And now that time has turned the pages, it's the sweetest joke on earth that I have you here forever by my side. And maybe someday you're gonna hurt me. I've been hurt in life before. Only God can know, and time alone will tell. But in the meantime, I'll be loving you with all my heart and soul, and pray God to let it last if that's His will. So don't be angry with me, darling, if I fail to understand all your little wells and wish you all the time. Just to remember that I'm dumb, I guess, like any foolish man, and my head stays sort of foggy 'cause you're mine. Thank you, everybody here. Thank you.
Woo, great job.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, can I tell a Stonewall story from way back in the way back in the 50s? I don't know if you remember this or not. Stonewall had just had a few records out, and you'd come down to Georgia, and you were working some shows down there and staying at the promoter's house. And the promoter was a disc jockey.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he told me the story, now you can tell your side of it. This is the way he told me. He said he got up to go to the radio station one morning and let you sleep in. But he left the radio on in the house. And he was promoting your show for that night. And he said, and don't forget tonight, folks, in person, Stonewall Jackson. They said you heard him say Stonewall Jackson. You jumped out of bed, ran into the living room, and said, I'm on.
I'm on.
If that's not a true story, it's a good one.
Yeah, I did that one time. I stayed at some folks' house like that, and I woke up, and that whole room was full of people. And I just woke up and looked, and so I hadn't stayed at many private homes since then.
Bill, I have a classic, well, it's a story that I think I need to tell here maybe. I was visiting my sister, Tiny, down in West Plains, Missouri. And when I go down there, you know, out on the farm, I'm just, you know, kick back, no makeup, hair and rollers and all this and that, jazzed out at my sister's. And one day I was in that shape, no makeup, hair and rollers and whatever, and I was taking a nap. And my sister came in, and she said, there's someone here that wants to see you. And I said, I can't go out there looking like this. I mean, look, oh, she said, well, what am I going to tell them? They just, and I said, okay. So I just jumped up, threw a scarf on my head and went out there, and there's this man and woman sitting in my sister's living room. And I said, hello, how are you? And the woman never blinked. I mean, she never looked at me. She was sitting on a sofa this way. Her husband was across the room over there in a chair. And he said, howdy. And I said, my sister said, you wanted to see me? And he said, yep. And the woman has never, she was looking out the window that way. She never blinked. She never turned her head, nothing. And I said, well, here I am. He said, yep. And the woman still hasn't looked. And I said, I think I understand. You wanted to look at me. And he said, yep. I said, well, here I am. And he said, yep. I said, you don't like what you see? Nope. I said, I don't look like I do on television. Nope. And they got up and walked out. And I told my sister, I said, I'm going to kill you. I said, don't you ever do that to me again. She said, well, what was I going to say? What was I going to tell them? I said, tell them I'm not here. I mean, they just wanted to look at me.
That reminds me a little of the story. You remember the night we were coming out of Canada after we'd taped a television
Yes,
show?
I
had gone to
do.
bed in the back of the bus, and the customs guy from the American side came on. He said, I want to see Bill Anderson. And my bus driver said, well, he's gone to bed. Said, get him up. I want to see him. So they buzzed me back in the back. I got up, and, just threw on an old ball cap and old traveling clothes, and I walked up there, and I said, you want to see me? And he just looked at me a minute. He said, nope, it ain't my TV. Turned around and left.
Hey, Bill.
Bill?
Hey, Bill.
Bill, I've got a...
I was working the show, and I don't know if Goldie Hill was on the show or not, but I think it was Lafayette, Louisiana, and Hank Williams, and he had been imbibing a little bit, and he didn't want to go on the show. And this promoter says, well, I got a house full of angry people out there if you don't show up. And he said, well, I don't want to go on. And he said, please just go out there and say a few words and maybe sing a song. And so he walks out on the stage and he rips that guitar down. And he said, you folks come to see old Hank, didn't you? And the applause just went everywhere, and he ripped that guitar down, and he said, well, you've seen him, and he walked off, and he never came back.
Goldie, we're glad to have you here. You weren't with us on the last session, but we're glad to have you. Where's old Carl Smith?
He's on vacation.
Oh, yeah?
I bet he's not having as much fun as we are.
I'm sure he's not. Talking about fans, they are wonderful people. And as you all know, Carl and I have been married for a long time, and this knock on the door, and I go answer the door, and the lady looks at me and said, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be married to Justin Tubb. And I said, well, I'm sleeping with Carl Smith.
They thought
you're not either.
They thought you were married to Justin because of the duet y'all did together.
I've got a Carl Smith story for you, and this includes her. Used to, when I'd come to the DJ convention, one of my rituals, I did it every year, is when it was over on Sunday morning, I would go out to Carl and Goldie's. I'd spend the day with them, and they'd take me to the airport. One time, Carl couldn't take me to the airport. He had something to do. He said, but I'll tell you what you do. You drive this car right here, and you leave it in so-and-so space out there. And when I'm not busy, I'll go out there and get the car and bring it home. I said, okay. So I took it out, put it in that space, locked it all up, put the keys in my pocket, and got on the plane and went back to L.A. Well, he called me later on, and I'm not going to tell you what he said. But that following Christmas, I got a little box and wrapped it up real pretty, put those keys in it, and sent it to him for a Christmas present.
Hey, y'all know one of the things that we got an awful lot of comment on and an awful lot of mail about when we did the first series of the family reunion videos were the gospel songs that we did. And we haven't done a whole bunch of gospel songs today. Gene Shepard, why don't you lead us all in one?
There's a place dear to me where I'm alone to be with my friends at the old country church. There with Mother I went, and my Sundays were spent with my friends at the old country church. Precious years of memories. Oh, what joy they bring to me. How I long once more to be with my friends at the old country church.
that's good. Let's do another gospel song.
This is a song that I do. I'm very active in masonry. I think some of you know that, and my friend Jimmy Dickens welcomed him to the fraternity just recently. And this is a song that I do at a lot of Masonic funerals and so forth. It's one of the great country hymns. Okay, is that G?
Yeah.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joys we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joys we share as we tarry there, none other has ever.
One of the greatest things that you do, you combine a gospel song and your train songs, and you do Life's Railway to Heaven. Would you do that for us?
Give me a key of E there. Give me a kickoff. Everybody got it? Life is like a mountain railway with its engine in the air that's brave. We must make the run successful from the cradle to the grave. Watch the curves, the hills and trestles, never falter, never quail. Keep your hand upon the throttle and your eyes on the rail. Everybody, blessed Savior, that will guide us till we reach that blissful shore where the angels wait to join us in thy praise forevermore. Little band now. I'd like to hire all y'all every day. As you roll across the trestle, spanning Jordan's swelling tide, you'll behold the Union Depot, into which your train will glide. There you'll meet the superintendent, got to follow want to tell everybody while I got you and the people who watch this video, and there is a God, and my prayers were answered, and I don't know how much more time he got planned for me, but I'll treasure every second of it. And thanks to all you wonderful people who called and stood by Old Box when I needed you the most. God bless you.
We love you. Those interviews that you did with Roxanne Russell on the Opry Backstage show, to this day, that's the most response we've ever gotten to anything that we've done on that show.
Well, thank you very much, Bill.
You do imitate me, don't you? What do you do in your show in Branson? Because I know you do something on me.
I imitate you every night.
Well, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Po' boy here. You know, I was raised on a little farm down in Georgia, and our land was so poor and so hard and yellow that you had to sit on a sack of fertilizer just to raise an umbrella. My mama used to plow the fields with our old mule Albert, but one day old Albert just laid down and died. And my daddy, who had a bad back, went to town and did what any red-blooded American would do. He bought Mama a set of harness. Mama would pull that old plow, and me and little sister would try to keep it in the furs. One time Mama stopped, and it was about 110 in the shade. She looked up at the sky and she said, "Albert, you son of a gun, why'd you pick this time of year to die?" And at night, we'd all sit around the table. We didn't have nothing to eat. We just sat around the table. And my daddy would look over at Mama and say, "Mama, sing a song." She'd said, "Sing a song? Hell, I've been out plowing the fields all day. You expect me to sit down and sing country trash all night?" I remember one time that my mama come home in the middle of the afternoon, and my papa kind of sarcastically said, "Home a little early, aren't you?" Little did my late father know that my mama was suffering from the worst case of PMS that any woman ever had. She hit him with everything in sight. Blacked his eyes, broke his nose, knocked all of his teeth out. But then she picked him up in her arms, and she looked at him in that old graceful way and said, "Still, though I broke your jaw, still, you're my paw. I love you still." God bless you, Mama.
Oh, it happened just that way, didn't it? You're crazy. Oh. What are you laughing at?
Oh, I love that. I just love it.
Well, you love it because he wasn't imitating you.
I know that.
Do people imitate you? Yodeling?
Yeah. You know, Grandpa Jones, God love him, he could actually yodel. He really could. And once you watch those tapes, and I was so honored to sit beside him, and I know that he's in heaven, that's for sure. Amen to that. And I was able to sit there and learn to love him because I didn't know him. And at the Opry, the last time I said, "Grandpa, I don't do the Opry. I'm not that honored, but I've done it many times. But I will cry, and that's okay, isn't it?" I said, "Grandpa, do you know how much I love you?" And he said, "Yeah, I know how much you love me." I said, "I sat beside you there, and I said, that was a great honor." And I said, "You said I could come out to your farm, didn't you?" I would have done it, too. I just didn't make it. But he's there in heaven, and I love you, Grandpa. And this yodel, I'm going to do a yodel thing like this. This is Swiss yodeling, and this is for Grandpa. Hi-da-lo-dee-dee-ay, la-la-la-lo-doo-dee-ay, hi-da-lo-dee-dee-ay, la-la-lo-dee, hi-da-lo-dee-dee-ay, la-la-la-lo-doo-dee-ay, hi-da-lo-dee-da-lo-dee. And this is cowboy yodeling. Ha-da-lo,
You remember Roy Rogers. That's Trigger.
Margot, that's great. Oh, that's wonderful.
I don't know how she does that. Wow.
No.
You know that Margot's the first one that Dale Reese has not been impersonating. He's been sitting here.
Go ahead, Dale, impersonate Margot.
It's wonderful to sit beside him, hearing him singing like Stonewall. When Stonewall was singing over there, it's like, wow.
Jimmy Newman told me that he's got some Louisiana stories that we haven't heard. We need to get him a microphone.
They're way before the 1960s, like they've been talking about. I wasn't there, but I heard about this Cajun had a band down home, you know, and he's the one that gave the start to the late Harry Schode, who really revived Cajun music with Jolie Blonde back in the late 40s. But anyhow, it was during the war, and he was playing this particular place in Orange, Texas, I think it was, a Showboat Club. It was a boat that was on the edge of the Sabine River over there, and it was during the war, and they had some popular war songs, like this Cajun walked up and said, "Hey, how about doing 5 minutes more?" It was a popular song during the war. And this Cajun looked at his watch and said, "What you talk about, man? We just start this dance. It's not just 5 minutes." Another night, another Cajun walked up, and there's another song that was popular. Those were pop songs. At least he's excusable because he had a country band, and very popular country band. And this one Cajun said, "Hey, how about playing Put Another Chair at the Table? Waitress, brought another chair at the table for this man." And at this same club, this little fella would come up and bug the band to sing, and he was, well, he'd bug them, and he was not exactly popular with the band, but because he always sang another pop song called "I'm Alone Because I Love You," and he was a mixed nationality, brought up by a real French-speaking person, so the English was not. Well, you could tell he was not. He was pretty good, but not too good at speaking English, in other words. So anyhow, that night it was real crowded in this club, and this whole boy, they let him on the bandstand to render a song. So he was going to do this pop song, and he started singing, "I am alone because," and about that time one of the musicians slipped a 4-inch firecracker in his hip pocket and lit it. "I am alone because I bow." He said, "What that was over there?" That's my recollections of my home country in Louisiana, and all of us musicians down there. We kicked those jokes around for a long time, but they really happened, you know.
You got me wanting to hear some Cajun music. Does the band know any Cajun songs?
They might do. They might know a swamp song. Well, okay, well, that's awfully Cajun of y'all. Thank you very much. Let me move around while I don't knock a hole in this nice... Oh, that's a nice toenail. Let's see where we are. Hungawa. Hungawa. Everybody's in voice for this. Wow, listen to how many folks are involved. Oh, how we dance. No, that's the wrong song. You guys ready for a little beat here? Mosquitoes are buzzing around my head, Spanish moss for my bed. Seldom see dry land, 'cause I'm an alligator man. I'm the gator all night long, Sally's hiding, then I'm gone. See the bells from Bayou Chandler, this alligator man. Hello. People search the world for fame, but fighting gators is my game. See the scars on my hands. I'm an alligator man. Alligator man till I die. When I'm married by and by, pretty bell from my shan will raise a little gator man. That's it too. That's it. Thank you.
Where does the age come in?
Well, I'm trying to hear the band, that's why. And now that I'm through with the song, there's supposed to be an A in there. Thank you, Bill.
Wasn't that fun? People you haven't seen in a while singing songs you haven't heard in a while. They still sound great and have some of the greatest stories in the world. It's truly a dream come true to be able to watch some of the most talented performers gathered in one room sharing themselves and their talents with their friends and you. If you've got the whole series, you're going to be able to see in Volume 2 Bobby Bare singing Detroit City, Jim Ed Brown and Goldie Hill singing I Was Looking Back to See. That's a song the Browns had out and one that Justin Tubb and Goldie Hill had a hit with in the 50s. Jack Green sings a song written by Grandpa Jones, one that was sung at his funeral, Fallen Leaves. Jimmy Dickens does Good Old Mountain Dew, and Charlie Walker gets some country swing going with Pick Me Up on Your Way Down. So get some rest, then pop in the next video and get the reunion underway again.